There is a system which has sprung up within the last decade called Neurolinguistic programming. I don't know whether any of you have heard of it. The people who write that is Lewis and Kuchalik. It's an American system of teaching people to communicate. Neuro being related to the brain, and linguistic related to language, and programming to suggest in some way that language and programming, that one can be trained to use language in a better way. It has been called therapeutic wizardry and produces changes in one's point of view of the world and one's abilities. But it isn't an all-inclusive system, because, as I will suggest to you in this talk, the linguistic side of our abilities isn't the sum total of what you can do with the brain. We have two hemispheres. One is linguistic, but there is another approach that we can use to get into the other side of our brain and use that in a very constructive and positive way. In the Western world, I suppose we've come to the philosophy of thinking that all the world's a stage, perhaps, and the men and women merely players in Shakespearean terms, and we have our exits and our entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. And perhaps, like Macbeth, we are poor players who strut and fret their hour upon the stage and then are seen no more. And life, as he says, is a tale told by a madman, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Well, we have also had the philosophy today that life is the pursuit of liberty and happiness, but I would like to suggest to you that it is also magic and mystery, and we are all perhaps on a magical mystery tour, and we must use magic to solve this mystery. And the way we can use magic is in some way to demystify it. The world is, as it were, full of powerful demons that we can tame and exploit to do our will. There is a saying too that hell is empty now, and that all the demons are in our heads. These are things like Socrates' demon, who spoke to him and gave him inspiration for his work, and the poet's muse, channeled to other worlds of imagination. We all have these kind of abilities in our head, but we make very little use of them. How does one begin to, as it were, tame a demon, to have access to these hidden abilities? First of all, as it's suggested by the NLP method, you must find the name of the demon. Those of you who use computers and word processors are familiar with having a pile of floppy disks, and you slot them into the machine, and when you press the appropriate keys, the IR, whatever it is, you can get a menu on the screen showing all the programs that are available on that particular disk. And then you can call up any of those names that you see, and the program will feed into the machine, and behold, it'll do its thing obediently, just like some little slave or demon. But if you get one punctuation mark wrong, you spell one letter wrong, the computer won't work. This is the way, you know, that magic always was, that you have to get that spell, that name, exactly right. before it would switch on. Now imagine that you have another pile of floppy disks there, and that is 9 times as big as the first pile that you saw. And when you plug them into the computer, no names come up on the screen. There's a security check in there, and it isn't going to tell you what the names of these programs are. But you do know that the program's there because it says so many bytes are taken off, you see. So you have to go on trying, as it were, name after name after name. You know, you can put little programs into various words and all this sort of thing until you hit on one name. And this is the sort of situation we're in with our mind, that we have this enormous capability to get that ability, but we've got to find the words to put it into action. There's a vast reservoir of information, experience that we all have, which has got buried in our subconscious. And the only way to bring it up to the surface is by finding the name of that program so that we can access it. We don't know the key that would sort of bring it out of our subconscious under the control of our will. So some of these things are like locked rooms, as I made this simply earlier this afternoon, which we can't gain access to in this house, which represents the mind. So learning words and their meaning can always help us in the task of developing our mind. To give you quite a simple example, the Eskimos have about 70 words for describing snow, various types of snow. Now, the use of these words enables the Eskimos to recognise specific conditions in which it is safe to go out of their igloo and go hunting, or the snow is right for building an igloo, or on other occasions it's not safe to go out in that sort of snow. So the use of these linguistic descriptions is vital to the survival of the Eskimo. In the same way, if we want to access various parts of our brain, then we must know the words relating to the way in which the brain works, where the various parts of the brain are located and what they do. For example, you wouldn't get very far trying to service a motor car, the ignition system or anything, if you didn't know what the distributor did in that engine and where it was located on the as it shows you in the handbook. Most of us are not experts in describing olfactory or gustatory sensations, but you have to listen to somebody who's good at this to understand, you know, what I'm trying to put over. Somebody like a wine taster, for example, will say, you know, you taste the wine, a rich bouquet, delightful perfume, such a nice concentration of flavours, lush, ripe, mouth-watering, honeyed nectar, a complex, seductive, unctuous quality, lingering aftertaste, slight tang, but mellow, not at all acidic. You know, you can go on filling out these words one after another, you know, and it's forming a little picture. He can describe his olfactory, his taste buds, you know, sort of educated. And these words enable him to separate one kind of wine from another. I mean, to me, one glass of wine is just like any other glass, you know. I mean, I'd either drink it or I can't drink it. So, but if you have access to a huge vocabulary of words like this, you can also be specific in your taste. It enables you to express differences which wouldn't be possible in any other way. These groupings of words, as described in NLP, form what's called a lead system, like labels with which you can gain access to a program in your mind, because olfactory input goes directly into your perception without undue neurological processing. It tends to operate more efficiently as a lead system, and it models other perceptions linguistically. But we tend to have common phrases like it's bitterly cold outside. You see, that's an olfactory analogue for the cold. It's bitter, if you follow what I mean. And that was tastefully done, and that involves taste. It's a lead system for getting in and describing things. The NLP system suggests people have different kinds of representational systems depending on their particular lead system. They may be using visual lead systems, auditory or kinesthetic ones. The magic is in discovering the representational system that we or other people use, because it enables us to understand and communicate with them better. If you know a person is using this sort of olfactory lead system, then you too can get into his mind better, his or her mind better, by using the same sort of analogue, if you follow what I mean. You know, if they're using just visual things, you can communicate with them better on that visual level, and so on. This is using appropriate descriptive words. What they call in NLP digitalization, focusing on details. It has a complementary process, though, which I would like to distinguish from the verbal things that I've been describing. Verbal is related to digitalization. On the other side, you have what is called analogue. And analogue is an objective description or meaning carried out mainly by gestures and body language. This is something that is more or less symbology in a word. It differs from the digitalization of language in that you indicate something by a kind of symbol. Your body language is a sort of symbolization for what you're saying or what you're thinking. To remember the difference between a word-based system, digitalization, and analogue, I could perhaps hold up two fingers, and that's the victory sign, you remember, from Winston Churchill's days. This is an analogue system, isn't it? Analogue, however, is less precise, less exact than digital, because, of course, this sign might be mistaken for something else that you're all well aware of, not particularly victorious. Nevertheless, analogue systems are very useful in helping you to know what people are thinking. It relates directly to the thought in a way that digital language doesn't. Words are sort of arbitrary labels. They help us to pull programs out of the subconscious. But the word to eat, for example, exists in many different languages. And if you don't know the language, of course you can't convey that you want something to eat to a Spaniard, or a Frenchman. If you don't know those languages, you just can't get anything to eat. But analogue is useful then, because you can put your hand to your mouth and say, somebody and you give him a symbolic gesture which he can understand in spite of the language barrier. And of course, by your body language, you can very often convey something in an instinctive way to a trained observer. But this also gives clues to your personality, the way you use these particular gestures, which of course are very much more common in Mediterranean countries than perhaps in England, where we're less demonstrative, you know. In NLP, particular emphasis is placed on the interpretation of eye movement and pupil response, the way the pupil of the eye responds to what people are saying to them, what you're saying to somebody. In the early 1960s, glasses were produced which acted like a two-way mirror. One could see out from inside the glasses, but no one could see your eyes. The front looked like a mirror. They were called T2s. It indicated the importance of the eyes in communication. Since people cannot usually control the response of their eyes, they are a dead giveaway for what they're thinking. Many Arabs wear dark glasses even indoors for this reason. And the jade dealers of Hong Kong particularly wear dark glasses to hide this pupil dilation which occurs when they're handed a particularly valuable specimen of jade, you see. The pupils of the eyes expand, and of course they're immediately given away. When confronted with an unpleasant or noxious stimulus, the pupil of the eye usually contracts. On the one hand, this is helpful for budding Don Juan, and on the other, it's handy to know when not to argue with somebody, when you see the pupils of the eye beginning to contract, especially if they've taken a bit of drink. You know that there's likely to be trouble. You know, trouble is on the horizon. You need to have a saying about it. One of my friends many years ago, don't speak to him, he's got his little eyes on, you know. And you have to be very careful when that happens. Visual input is transmitted from the retina of the eye through the optic nerve to the back of the brain through a junction called the optic chiasma, where information is divided and the two left fields of view go to the right of the brain and the two right fields of view in each eye go to the left of the brain. They're sort of transposed left to right. And as you know, visual sensation can be generated by pressing on the eyeball. And in the mid-1970s, Bandler and Grinder, two gentlemen, began to study the pattern of movements of people's eyes as they thought and spoke. They discovered that these movements correlated fairly well with certain types of information retrieval behaviour. This behaviour was called accessing cues. When people are looking at an object, their eyes will see its outlines and scan over the scene. Your eye doesn't stay stationary looking at something, it's continually moving about from one point to another. And gradually, by this process of scanning, the eye builds up an image within the brain. This is related to the deeper centres of the brain to a muscle memory. So that in the muscles around the eyes, that all these signals from the various muscles which have been used to move the eye are sort of put into a kinesthetic memory deep down in the brain. So So it is possible to reactivate this muscle memory for outlines of whatever we have seen. And this is quite independent of the visual memory that we have in the neocortex. It's something that occurs in the older part of the brain. And when people are thinking and talking, they tend to move their eyes in a sort of scanning pattern, and these scanning patterns are symptomatic of their attempts to gain information in different parts of the brain. To retrieve a memory or create a new thought, they exhibit behaviour indicating the nature of the system that they are accessing.